Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR official 24 channel. The Newmans capture Matt, but Nick loses control of the auto when Matt attacks him. At Sharon's, she paces and pours coffee as Noah and Nick talk about Matt. Nick says they're staying for word on their plan. At the new estate, Victor gets a call from his platoon attesting that they've Matt possessed. Adam says he's planned this impeccably and offers to take his place in this, so he can sit back and watch. Victor says he should have taken care of that man a long time ago, and is determined to do it now. Adam is sure that Matt wants to destroy Victor and reminds him he was shot lately. They need him to stay alive. His pater tells him to stop fussing. Nick will take charge and make sure Matt stays down. They shoot Nick Matt's position. Noah and Sharon contend on going with Nick. As they drive, they talk to Victor and Adam on the phone. There's a lot of business, and they're slightly moving. Victor assures them Matt will suffer. At the motel, Matt sobs as he looks at old filmland of Sienna. He reminds her of their promises, not just suggestions. Till death do us part, who knows? That could be moment, he says. She comes to, and says it's time for them to say goodbye. He says she's beautiful indeed when she lies to him. Matt accuses her of only staying with him for the gratuities. She claims she only wanted to see if he still watched. Women were always throwing themselves at him, and he didn't feel to watch about her. When she wanted attention, she went out to get it, but always stayed by his side. She strokes his face and says there's still time for them to make this right. He backs down from her. Sienna says she loved him. There was a gentleness in him, and he could see through everyone, including her. He understood her and could handle her. Now, she's hurting and the ice in his eyes is hurting her further. She begs him to uncuff her, so they can talk. When he leans over, she expects he'll uncuff her. Rather, he tightens the bond. She screams at him, but he says the boat has sailed, and they're together until the graves are full. Sienna tries to move him, they can start again. That sounds like a lot of sanguinity to him. Effects were real between them, and also she turned into a greedy Gus. He says the Newmans always need a real or imaginary devil so they can present themselves as saints. She asks for his side of effects. He points out that she has been spending the plutocrat he's made from medicines for times. Sienna says they can move on, and she can keep him safe. He says she smells hopeless. She tells him he's disgusting. He thinks he's being judgy. All that he make for her is gone. All that's left for them is farewells. He gets a textbook and she assumes it's from Annie and imagines what their relationship must be like. Matt says she's more at being bitter than loving. She asks why he married her and if he was obsessed with Sharon the entire time. He asks her to explain the Noah thing for him. It's not like the Joe is a great thinker. He likes everything about him other than him sleeping with his woman. She asks why he'd buddy up with Noah when it was sure that the verity about his identity would come out. Sienna assumes that was all part of his plan, and he's just a monster and dead inside. Matt says he only wanted her fidelity. He really is as dangerous as they all say. As he keeps looking out the window, she says he was always evil, and he indeed took her to see the daylight. He thinks she's just a black hole of need. Noah is just another in a long line of toys. Annie shows up and says the care is ready. Sienna asks if he has her hooked on medicines and offers her plutocrat. Annie thinks his cognizance must be bleeding if he's been hearkening to Sienna all this time. Matt uncuffs Sienna. She runs for the door, but Annie stops her and pulls out her gun before dragging her off to the auto. When they get to the parking lot, Matt rubs his hands together and also kisses Sienna. She bites his lip. He says she drew first blood, but he'll draw the last. As they try to shove her into the auto, the platoon drive up with their ordnance out. Sienna runs to Noah. Nick and Sharon tell Matt a drone has been following him. They tell him he's not going to jail yet. Noah and Sharon bring Sienna to her place. She tells them how Matt sounded to take pleasure in being in complete control. Sienna tells Noah she stayed alive because of him and his family. He promises no bone will hurt her again. Sharon tells her she knows what it's like to be pursued by a monster. She's sure that Sienna is running on adrenaline, but she needs to prepare for the shock to come. Sharon urges her to be proud of surviving and understand that Matt didn't win. She leaves them alone, and Sienna tells Noah how Matt gasconaded about how dangerous he was. Noah explains they tracked Matt and he'll keep losing. She's sure Matt was going to put her in the ground. He says it'll be a long time before he lets her out of his sight. They imagine his mama being her therapist. That gives her a laugh. Many hours agone. She didn't suppose that would be again. She owes him her life. Sharon brings in some dip and says the agony is over. Back at the estate, Victor and Adam stay for news from Nick. They agree that Nick deserves to be the one to end this. Nick brings Matt to the new estate. He jokes about being brought to such a nice place. Victor tells the punk to laugh while he can. Matt introduces himself to Adam, who calls him trash. Victor punches Matt in the gut and holds him down. Nick says they're going to make sure he no way comes near them again. He ties Matt over and puts him in an auto. They drive. Matt jokes he mustn't have brought Sharon since he's hovered by their chemistry. He mocks Nick and Noah for having a thing for his rejects. It must be weird for him that Adam was married to Sharon too. Nick says he's sick and demoralized. Trying to wriggle free, Matt asks if he's going to make him dig his own grave before he kills him. He's recognized that he's doing it himself, but he's not a killer. He tells him not to overrate himself because effects will go sideways. Matt rambles about how the Newmans are attraction for drama. He taunts Nick about how he wouldn't be suitable to kill him when the time comes. Matt manages to get his hands from behind his reverse and starts choking Nick, who loses control of the auto. Matt proves he is far more dangerous, unhinged, and willing to destroy himself and everyone around him than anyone anticipated, and it all unfolds under a storm-darkened sky that seems to echo the doom hanging over every character involved. The episode opens with Victor Newman standing like a general surveying a battlefield, his expression carved from stone as the final pieces of his plan snap into place. Because after weeks of manipulation, surveillance, and silent intimidation, the Newmans finally have Matt cornered, lured into an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of town where the shadows are thick, the air smells of oil and rust, and every footstep echoes like a warning, and as Nick, Adam, and a tightly wound security team close in, Victor's voice cuts through the tension with icy authority, reminding everyone that Matt is not just a criminal, but a ticking time bomb who has already proven he has no limits, no conscience, and no fear of consequences. Matt, meanwhile, paces like a caged animal, his eyes darting, his breath uneven, sweat glistening on his forehead as the walls finally close in, because deep down he knows this is the end of the road, yet instead of surrendering, he smiles, a slow, chilling grin that sends a ripple of unease through even the most hardened Newman guards, and when Victor steps forward and declares that it's over, that the games, lies, and bloodshed end tonight, Matt laughs, a broken, hollow sound that echoes through the empty building as he spits back that nothing ever really ends, it only changes form. The capture itself is swift but violent, with Matt lunging unexpectedly, forcing Nick and Adam to tackle him to the ground as he thrashes and curses, screaming Nick's name with a venom that feels deeply personal, because this isn't just about survival for Matt anymore, it's about revenge, about dragging the Newmans into the abyss with him. And as zip ties snap around his wrists and a hood is briefly pulled over his head, Victor allows himself a single, controlled breath of relief, believing, for just a moment, that the nightmare is finally contained. But that moment is dangerously short-lived, because Victor's fatal mistake is assuming that control equals safety, and as Matt is shoved into the back seat of an SUV for transport, Nick insists on driving him personally, his jaw tight, his emotions dangerously close to the surface. Because Matt isn't just another enemy. He's the man who threatened his family, manipulated his trust, and nearly destroyed everything Nick holds sacred, and Victor warns him, stern and unyielding, to keep his distance emotionally, to remember that rage is exactly what men like Matt exploit. But Nick barely hears him, his mind already racing with anger, guilt, and a desperate need to end this chapter once and for all. The car pulls onto the highway, rain beginning to fall in heavy sheets that blur the road ahead, the windshield wipers moving in frantic rhythm as tension thickens inside the vehicle, and in the back seat Matt sits unnervingly calm, his earlier frenzy replaced by a quiet, predatory stillness that sets every instinct on edge, because men like Matt are most dangerous when they stop yelling and start thinking, and Nick senses it, glancing at the rearview mirror, locking eyes with Matt's reflection just as a twisted smile curls across Matt's lips. Then, without warning, Matt launches his attack, slamming his cuffed hands against the partition, jerking violently to one side as he begins to scream, taunting Nick, mocking his family, hurling names and secrets like weapons, dredging up old wounds involving Sharon, Faith, and even Cassie, pushing every psychological button he can find, and Nick snaps, shouting back, his grip tightening on the steering wheel as anger floods his system, his focus fracturing under the emotional assault, because Matt knows exactly what to say, exactly how to turn Nick's protective instincts into reckless fury. The SUV begins to swerve as Matt kicks the seat, rocking the vehicle just enough to disrupt Nick's control, and rain-slick pavement makes every correction harder, more dangerous, as headlights from oncoming cars flash like warning signals in the dark, and in a horrifying split second, Matt lunges forward again, slamming his shoulder against the partition with such force that Nick jerks the wheel, the tires screech, and the world seems to tilt sideways. The car veers violently, spinning as Nick fights to regain control, his heart pounding, his mind screaming that he can't let Matt win, can't let his family pay the price for this moment of weakness. But physics doesn't care about legacy or intention, and the SUV skids across lanes, narrowly missing another vehicle before crashing through a guardrail and rolling down an embankment in a terrifying cascade of metal, glass, and chaos. The impact is brutal, bone-rattling, and disorienting, with airbags exploding, windows shattering, and the sickening sound of twisting steel echoing through the storm. And when the vehicle finally comes to rest, upside down and smoking, there is a haunting silence broken only by rain and the crackle of damaged electronics. Nick hangs suspended by his seatbelt, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, his vision blurred as panic surges through him, because the first thing he thinks isn't of himself, but of whether Matt is alive, whether this nightmare is truly over or about to get even worse. And from the back seat comes a low, unsettling laugh, confirming his worst fear that Matt has survived, injured but conscious, fueled now by adrenaline and the sick thrill of having caused real, irreversible damage. Emergency sirens wail in the distance as Newman's security scrambles to the scene, Victor receiving the call that makes his blood run cold, his carefully constructed control shattering in an instant as he realizes that despite capturing Matt, he may have underestimated the cost, because Nick's life now hangs in the balance, and the family he vowed to protect is once again paying the price for confronting a monster who thrives on chaos. As first responders arrive, cutting Nick free and restraining Matt once more, the emotional weight of what has happened settles heavily over everyone involved, because this wasn't just an accident. It was the inevitable result of unchecked rage, manipulation, and the dangerous illusion that power can neutralize pure madness. And as Nick is rushed to the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness, images of his family flashing through his mind, Matt is dragged away screaming promises of revenge, his voice echoing into the night like a curse, leaving Victor to stand in the rain, his face etched with a rare mixture of fear, regret, and fury, realizing that this war is far from over, and that the true damage inflicted tonight may not be measured in wreckage or injuries, but in the emotional scars that will haunt the Newmans long after the sirens fade and the road is cleared, because in Genoa City, victory is never clean, justice is never simple, and sometimes capturing the enemy is only the beginning of the real nightmare. As the wreckage is finally cleared from the rain-soaked highway and flashing emergency lights fade into the distance, the emotional aftershocks of the crash begin to ripple outward, touching every corner of Genoa City, because what happened that night is not something that can be neatly contained in police reports or medical charts. And as Nick is wheeled into the emergency room under harsh fluorescent lights, doctors shouting orders while nurses work frantically to stabilize him, the weight of Matt's attack presses down on the Newman family with suffocating force. Victor arriving at the hospital moments later with Adam at his side, his face pale but rigid, his jaw clenched so tightly it seems carved from granite, because for all his power and preparation, he cannot by certainty when it comes to his son's life, and as he watches through the glass while doctors rush Nick into surgery, memories of past losses and near misses crash over him in relentless waves, reminding him that being a Newman has always meant living one heartbeat away from tragedy. Meanwhile, word of the accident spreads quickly, as it always does in Genoa City, and Sharon receives the call that makes her knees buckle, her hands shaking as she tries to process the fact that Nick was in a serious crash, that Matt was involved, that everything she feared might happen has happened, and as she rushes to the hospital, her mind races with regret, with unspoken words, with the haunting realization that no matter how many times she and Nick try to move on, their lives remain tangled in danger and unfinished business. Faith, too, senses that something is terribly wrong, her anxiety sharp and visceral, and as she waits at home with a pit in her stomach, she clings to the fragile hope that her father will survive yet another brush with death, while Adam struggles with his own guilt, replaying the capture over and over in his mind, wondering if he could have done something differently, if he should have insisted on driving instead of Nick, if this catastrophe was avoidable or simply inevitable when dealing with someone as unhinged as Matt. In a separate wing of the hospital, Matt is treated under heavy guard, his injuries significant but not life-threatening, and even as doctors tend to his wounds, his eyes remain sharp, calculating, burning with a twisted satisfaction that refuses to be extinguished. Because in his fractured mind, causing Nick to lose control of that car was not a desperate act but a victory, proof that even in chains he can still dictate the narrative, still reach into the heart of the Newman family and rip something apart, and as he is transferred into police custody, shackled and surrounded by armed officers, he mutters dark, cryptic remarks about destiny and unfinished business, sending a chill through everyone within earshot. Back in Nick's hospital room hours later, the surgery finally over. The doctors cautiously optimistic. Victor stands at his bedside watching the steady rise and fall of his son's chest, a rare softness flickering in his eyes as he allows himself to acknowledge how close he came to losing Nick, and when Sharon arrives, their shared worry momentarily dissolves years of tension, as they exchange a look heavy with history, pain, and unbreakable connection, silently united by the simple fact that they both love the man lying unconscious between them. But even as Nick begins the slow process of recovery, the psychological damage inflicted by Matt's attack refuses to fade, because Nick's dreams are plagued by flashes of spinning headlights, Matt's mocking laughter, and the terrifying sensation of losing control, and when he finally wakes, disoriented and shaken, his first words are not of relief but of fury, demanding to know if Matt is still alive, if he's still out there, if he can still hurt anyone else, and Victor, ever the strategist, assures him that Matt is locked away and will face the full force of the law, though even as he says it, a nagging doubt lingers in his mind, because experience has taught him that men like Matt rarely stay contained for long. The crash also forces Victor to confront an uncomfortable truth about his own role in what happened, because while he would never admit it aloud, he knows that pushing Nick to confront Matt head-on, trusting his son to remain emotionally detached, was a miscalculation rooted in pride and overconfidence, and as he sits alone in his office late one night, staring out over the city skyline, he wrestles with the realization that his family's greatest strength, its fierce loyalty, can also be its greatest vulnerability, something Matt exploited with devastating precision. Elsewhere, the legal ramifications begin to unfold, with prosecutors building a case against Matt that now includes attempted murder, kidnapping, and a laundry list of prior crimes. Yet even as the evidence stacks up, whispers circulate that Matt may attempt an insanity defense, fueling outrage among those who have already suffered at his hands. And as hearings loom, tensions rise, alliances shift, and old grudges resurface, because in Genoa City, the courtroom is just another battlefield where power, money, and manipulation clash. Nick, still recovering, insists on attending one of the preliminary hearings despite Sharon's concerns, his presence sending a powerful message that he will not be intimidated or silenced. And when his eyes meet Matt's across the courtroom, the air crackles with hostility, Matt smirking as if daring Nick to react, to lose control again, while Nick forces himself to remain calm, drawing strength from the knowledge that this time, Matt's words no longer hold the same power over him. Yet the danger is far from over, because as weeks pass, subtle signs begin to emerge that Matt may still have allies on the outside, shadowy figures who benefit.